Welcome everyone to episode number 3 of Odd Sports Topics. I'm here with my co-host PJ Ellis, and returning from last week's vacation is Sarandon. Sarandon, good to have you back.
Nice to be back. Yeah.
So for this week, we have our second guest, and we talked to Lois Koepke, who is the director and president of the Milwaukee Bucks Studio Energee dance team, and is now the current executive director at the Atlanta Theater to Go, it was a very interesting interview. PJ, do you have anything to say about it?
Yeah, she was great. She has a bunch of insight on some funny encounters she had with the likes of Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan and George Karl and a couple other NBA figures, as well as just kind of going into the history of the team and how it got started. So it was a really good interview.
Yeah, she touched on like how to start a dance team, how there was not a lot of dance teams at the time, and some she also talked about some sexism some of her dancers faced, and I think that's really interesting because you see these dancers on the court and you think that everything's gonna be fine, and then sometimes it's not.
Yeah, it was a really good interview. I think you guys will really enjoy it. As for what's next for us this week, you guys will have an article from us the day after this interview airs, that Friday. And then you can obviously look forward to our Team Name Tuesdays. You guys are really enjoying that series, so we enjoy writing them. I'm glad you guys enjoy reading them. And then again after that, you'll have another interview, another article next Friday. So glad you guys are enjoying it. As always, follow us on our social medias. At Facebook, it's just Odd Sports Topics. Twitter is @Odd Sports Topics. And then obviously our website is www.oddsportstopics.com. We have a contact form if you guys have any suggestions for what you want to see on the podcast, any guests you want to see or areas of guests you want to see, or just articles you want written.
Yeah, as PJ said, a lot of this interview here that we did with Lois had a lot of things that I had never heard about before, and I'm assuming for the watchers and viewers here, it's the same for you. So hopefully it's interesting for you. We'll go right into the interview here. This is Lois Koepke, the former director and president of Milwaukee Bucks Studio Energee dance team. Hope you enjoy. We now welcome on our second guest of the Odd Sports Topics podcast, Lois Koepke, the former director and president of the Milwaukee Bucks Studio Energee dance team and the current executive director at the Atlanta Theater to Go. Lois, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for being on. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
So we want to jump into your NBA days with the Milwaukee Bucks. First question we have for you is, what made you decide to create a professional dance team in the NBA?
At that time, there were about half of the NBA teams had dance teams. And everyone knew the Lakers, the Laker girls. And a lot of people in Milwaukee knew about the Chicago Lovables. And I was working for a junior college at the time, and the dean of the college said to me, "Hey, do you think you could put a dance team together for the Milwaukee Bucks?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I can do that, no problem." And we started courting the Milwaukee Bucks, and sure enough, they decided to give it a go. They did a test pilot with us. And that's how it really got started.
And what year was this around?
1989, 1990.
Okay.
And we did, the first game that we did was the game that the Bucks went into 5 overtimes. And we happened to have more routines available. And I think that's what impressed them. So after that, we were a go.
So when you were starting it, you said only half the NBA teams had a dance team. So I'm assuming it was kind of difficult to see like what was successful and what wasn't. So how did you know when you were creating the dance team that you were doing it correctly?
I'm not sure I did. Some of it was gut instinct. Fortunately, because Chicago was so close, I was able to visit Kathy Core, who was the director of the Chicago Lovables at the time. So I went down to Chicago and got to spend the night with them, see what they do, saw practice, saw them out on the game. And it wasn't surprising, but it was nice to really have some hands-on training.
And how did you come up with the name Energee, especially with the unique spelling that you see with when it's on your, I guess, uniform?
With the EE and the exclamation point. When we were first starting out, we wanted to have something that was very energetic, would be the word. The Milwaukee Bucks were saying, we just want a name that sounds energetic with a lot of enthusiasm. And so I just put together a list of names, one being Energee, And I think I had the regular spelling and IE spelled. And they looked at the list, they came back, and John Steinmiller, who was the vice president of business operations at the time, said, how about Energee with the EE? And that will match Milwaukee. And then I added the exclamation point probably about 5 years in. We just added the exclamation point later on.
So I know you had said you had some help from Chicago, being able to go down there and kind of see how the way they did things. But I imagine there were still some struggles you faced. So what were some of the early struggles you faced when you went into this new journey?
So the first year was sponsored by the college that I worked with. At the end of that year, the college was sold to a person who didn't want to have anything to do with this. So now there was no funding, no money, no backing. And I set up a meeting with the Milwaukee Bucks and I told them that this is what's happening. And I gave them the proposal to continue with me and that I would start it as my own business. And actually, they were really excited about that. They were supportive of it. That's how it got started. But it was a struggle at first because some of the uniforms that we had to purchase literally were coming from thrift stores. I mean, just really bargain basement, secondhand type uniforms at first. And one of the dancers, her mother was a seamstress, and she did make our first outfits ever.
So I know you kind of talked about somebody came to you to start this up, but I guess like why were you chosen as the person to do that? What was your background that they wanted you for that job?
So at the time, I had a fitness studio and I was teaching at this junior college. I was teaching fitness and communications and some other things. My background is in communications. My degree's in communications and business and management. And so they came to me, they knew that I could dance. I had a dance background. I had a theater background from high school on. Did community theater right there in Milwaukee. And I will say that it was very helpful to have all of those things in my background. And because I had the dance background, my friend Vince Norton, the dean at the time, said, Lois, you know, I think you can do this. And I said, I know that I can do this. And I did it.
So once you got to the Bucks, how much freedom did they give you throughout the years? Did they, at first was it very like kind of strict, like this is what we want you to do, stick to this. And then once you kind of proved yourself as to being successful, they're like, okay, you can kind of have the reins to this dance team now? Or was it always just like, here you go for it?
A little bit of a mix. Of course, the Milwaukee Bucks, because now Energee became my business, the Milwaukee Bucks were essentially my clients. So the clients want to be happy and they need to have a say. So we worked as partners for all of those years. And it was a great collaboration. I really enjoyed working with all of the game entertainment people. It was a good collaboration. For the most part, all of the choreography and all of the music was left up to me. There were occasions when they said, hey, we're going to have a special night. Could you do a routine to, you know, Born in the USA, or could you do something with the band? And sure, you know, definitely could do that. The other part of it was all of the rehearsals, how I managed the team, how I coached the team. That was completely up to me with the support of the Milwaukee Bucks. They were involved in the auditions. They were involved in the selection of the team every year. And sometimes we did not agree. Sometimes they won, sometimes I won. But it was still a really good way to do business, good partnership.
Real quick, I have a couple of follow-up questions for you. I know you said that you had a dance background and it's why you felt you were qualified. What connection or what background did you have with basketball at that time?
Zero, nothing. I didn't even know the game. It was hilarious because I did not know the game. Most of the dancers, when they first come on the team, they don't know basketball because they're used to dancing. And in a lot of the smaller markets, which Milwaukee is a smaller market, in a lot of the smaller markets, to be able to dance for a professional sports team, that's probably the highest level that you're going to be able to dance, unless you're a ballerina and you can get into a ballet company. That is the level of being able to be a professional dancer and get paid for it.
But my second follow-up question was, I know today a lot of these dance teams and stuff, they do a lot of PR and community relations like events with these teams. I was wondering if you did any of those back when you started it.
Oh yes, we did. Being part of the community with the Milwaukee Bucks, their their motto was always to look for ways to give back to the community, and so we were a part of that. I think the mascot Bango, the dance team Energee, some of the Rim Rockers, all of those game entertainment people were a part of giving back to the community. So we did things for the MAC Fund, the American Heart Association, Susan B. Komen. I mean, we've done a lot of stuff that showed our support over the years to those organizations, and it was good. It was really a great way to get to meet people.
And you kind of talked about that you started this team in the 90s, and the 90s basketball, that was when it exploded, right? That's when it became the superstar league. It changed the way that the game is completely different now because of the 90s. So how have you seen the NBA with the dance team, that relationship change over the last 2-3 decades?
Well, eventually all of the teams had a dance team. The Boston Celtics were the last ones to add a dance team. That would have been probably in the last 8 years, I'm saying. They wanted to be hardcore. They did not want a dance team. They just wanted strict basketball, and they had a leprechaun as a mascot, but that was it. That's all they had. And eventually, I think, I don't know for sure about them, but I think what the NBA realized is that the entertainers can really be ambassadors for the team. And so to add the entertainment aspect, whether it's mascots, dance teams, drum lines, or whatever it is, we're all ambassadors for the team. That's why I think we were so successful over all the years. Some things are changing today, though, that dance teams are actually being rebranded to be more inclusive in adding men. Milwaukee Bucks did it last year, and I know the Orlando Magic did too. And what they're doing is they're getting away from the traditional dance teams. And I have a couple of theories why they're doing that, but I also think that it's a sign of the times. It's a sign of our society that perhaps the typical cheerleader image, all of that, is not as desired as showing community and unity and all of that stuff with men and women, no gender bias. It's great.
I know you said now all NBA teams have some form of a dance team. What is that community like? Do these dance teams have like a community where they're kind of close knit, like from team to team, or is it pretty separate to where each team has their own kind of dance team and that's the only interaction they have with each other?
About halfway into my career, there was a woman who started a conference every year for the coaches and the dancers of the NBA dance team. So we would go to those conferences, and it was so good for the coaches to connect with each other. It was also excellent for the dancers to be able to see, especially small market dance teams like we were, to see that they were as good, if not better, than some of the larger markets. So just that confidence of having that confidence and knowing that they are just like the Laker girls, that was huge for us.
That's really cool. So obviously, odd sports topics, we explored the odd things in sports. I imagine you have some odd things that happened to you during your time as the head coach. So do you care to share a few odd things you encountered while in that position?
One encounter that I'll probably never forget was I met Charles Barkley my very first year with the team. I met Charles Barkley over at Major Goolsby's after a game, and we had a chance to meet. Now, you're not supposed to talk with a player. No dancers can talk with a player. It's like forbidden. It's horrible. And in fact, I can tell you that if there are dancers that do that, they get removed from the team. Now, the players don't get removed from the team. They don't, if there's some fraternization there, the players are fine, but the dancers get removed from the team. And that night I was really nervous about meeting Charles Barkley because I wasn't sure, do I fit in because I'm a coach, or do I not fit in because I'm with the dancers? At any rate, I met Charles Barkley. He gave me his autograph on a little receipt. And the next morning, I turned on the news, and Charles Barkley had been arrested that night in Milwaukee because he punched somebody. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to talk to another player in my life. Probably the other thing that I'll mention is when I went down to Chicago, I met Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Now, you mentioned before about how much did I know about basketball? I knew nothing. I didn't know who Michael Jordan was or who Scottie Pippen was. So when I walked in there, I was introduced. Lois, this is Michael Jordan, and Kathy Cord, the coach of the Chicago Lovables, said to Michael, she's going to start a dance team in Milwaukee. And Michael said, that's just wonderful. I'm glad you could come down here and take a look. That's great. And I met Scottie Pippen, same thing. That's great. Well, good luck with you, Lois. And so I had no idea who these guys were. I just thought they were really nice guys. Come to find out, that was a huge thing. But one of the other things that I noticed was when I walked into the United Stadium at the time, people were waiting there for somebody, and I didn't know who they were waiting for. And in comes Michael Jordan. Of course, I didn't know that was Michael Jordan, but in walks this guy, and the staff calls him over, and Michael goes over and he starts to speak with a young man who's in a wheelchair, and his dad was there. And they're just having a little bit of conversation, and Michael's taking a picture with him. And then Michael had to go get ready for the game. But I looked at the father, and the father had tears in his eyes. And the boy was just ecstatic. And I realized how much this means to the fans, how much it means sometimes to just have that moment with a player. And I've never forgotten that. The fans are everything.
That's really cool.
Yeah, definitely growing up.
Yeah,
was the
especially I
same for us.
imagine, just like how big Michael Jordan was at that time, I imagine that meeting him for a fan was the end all be all. So that's a really cool story.
So you mentioned how players weren't allowed to see dancers and vice versa. Did you have a run-in with head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, George Karl, about this incident between a player and a dancer before?
I did, and I have to say, I love George Karl. He is an awesome coach. I enjoyed just watching him coach when we were there. We were at the practice facility one night, and I met George Karl, and he came over to me and he said, "It's nice to meet you." He said, "Now, I'm not going to have any problem with your girls, am I?" And I said, "Well, I'm not going to have any problem with your boys, am I?" And we just kind of smiled and shook hands, and and then what George Karl said, and I really appreciated this, is he said, coaching is coaching. And what he was saying was, it doesn't matter what you're coaching, just be a good coach.
Love that. Real quick, so you said that if a player was caught talking to a dancer, then the dancer would be removed. Is that a U rule, or is that like a Bucks rule, or is that like an NBA? Like who makes that rule?
I don't know if it's an NBA rule. I know that all the dance teams have it because we've communicated with each other that we're not going to do that. And I think it's for two reasons. One is, the girls on the team, we always called ourselves the girls, so I don't think I'm being, disrespectful at all. But the girls on the team, like me, didn't always know who the players were. And we didn't want to see them to get into a situation where perhaps they were talking to a player, but the player was married and they didn't know. And there was a situation that the wife sees that and it's not cool. So a lot of it had to do with, I think, keeping the players and their families intact and not have anybody from the organization, whether it was dancers or front office or whomever, to have that kind of personal relationship with any player. Obviously the upper executives did, but most of the staff as well as the entertainers didn't have interaction with the players.
I have a quick question about just entertainment and sports as a whole question. So NBA is clearly king of entertainment when it comes to like in-game entertainment. when it comes to like the NFL, there's a lot of dead time when it goes to commercial break if you're at an actual game. Same with the NHL, they clear off the ice, but you don't see like these professional dancers go out there and like do a routine or anything like that. Do you think that professional like dancing could be incorporated into football, hockey, soccer, just like other sports that don't have as much entertainment as the NBA does?
Well, I know that the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders have been around for a very long time. So yes, although all NFL teams do not have cheerleaders, the Packers don't have cheerleaders. They use the local college though, and I think that's kind of cool that they use the community college to have some fun with everybody. Hockey is a little hard because to dance on an ice rink, I have seen it done where they bring out the rug and they dance, but it doesn't seem like a really good match. It doesn't seem like a good fit to have dancers to try to dance at a hockey game. I've seen it a couple times. I've seen them at professional lacrosse games, at soccer games. But there isn't as much entertainment as there is in basketball. And I don't know if it's because our venue is so awesome with lighting and with a dedicated venue to just look right straight down and you're not too far away. Football is 60,000 people. Basketball doesn't have that many people. I think the entertainment, no matter what it is, has to make sense for whatever organization it is.
I know you said you mentioned the Dallas Cowboys. What's that or Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders? What's that distinction between the word cheerleader and dancer? Like, why do football use cheerleaders, but basketball uses dancers primarily?
Cheerleader is a really old term. So when the NFL started developing and having cheerleaders, like the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, that was the name. There were no dance teams at the time. Dance teams came later, and it started with the Laker girls. So dancers came much later. The distinction, though, at that time was always that the cheerleaders were just that. They would cheerlead on the side. And that dancers were professionally trained dancers actually doing routines and a visual piece of entertainment where the audience could just sit back and enjoy the entertainment and not like have to scream defense because the cheerleader was screaming defense. We've never taken offense at it. Some teams have. I mean, they make sure that they're known as a dance team rather than cheerleaders. I think it's fine either way.
Did you ever have to break like barriers of like sexism or anything along those lines to maybe get the respect that your dance team deserved? Because I know a lot of male fans maybe don't see it as hard work, as being a dance team.
Yes, there were enough instances that we were all aware of it. Part of the issue in putting out entertainers in general is that they're susceptible to whatever the crowd is going to do around them. We've had dancers grabbed, and those people have been immediately removed from the stadium. I will say that nobody in the arena wants to see anybody manhandled. So that's taken care of right away. And that happened several times where somebody was taken right out of the game. And they didn't think they were doing anything bad, or they might be, if they were sitting on court and they were right behind the dancers, they might be saying some sexist comments. If it got too much, they were reseated.
I know it was a couple years ago, maybe even last year, where a lot of the dancers had an uprising over the pay, and they're paid very low compared to like other professionals that are the top of their level. Like you said, professional dancing in the NBA is basically as high as you get. And I think some of them are making like on average like $14 an hour or something like that. Something just like that is like not appropriate for what they're doing. What strides have been made in that area in the last couple of years to get them paid more?
So I will say this, when I started, the dancers were paid nothing. It was just a volunteer group. And what I found is that over the years, the dancers generally weren't paid, or their expenses were paid. And where they would make their money would be in appearances. That changed after the first 5 years of me being there. They were making a small stipend, like $20 a game. And that basically covered their parking. And, I finally had to make the business case to the Milwaukee Bucks and say this, they put in a lot of work. They should be paid for rehearsals. They should be paid for the games. And I gave them a number, and the Bucks came back and said, you're absolutely right. We're going to do that. And we went with it. The $14 an hour today would really disappoint me because when I left the NBA, we were paying our dancers anywhere between $50 and $65 a game. I believe it was $25 a practice, I believe. And I know that other dance teams were making more than that, maybe $75. Where the issue came in, and I can talk about this more if you guys want to. I know what the issue was with the Milwaukee Bucks, but the issue came in with having the dancers do extra things and not getting paid for it, or requiring them to do a mandatory workout and then not getting paid for it. So their time is valuable just like anybody else's time, and they weren't getting paid for the above and beyond rehearsals and above and beyond games. But I don't know any team that wasn't paying their dancers at least $40 an hour or $40 a game at least. And the dancers are there for 5 hours, basically, 5 hours of time. So, some of the lawsuits, some of the things that have been out there, some of the lawsuits, I thought were ridiculous. And I will also say this, the dancers up front knew how much they would be making. This was not a surprise to them. They knew, and they didn't have to be on the team. So I think a lot of dancers at the time anyway, they really enjoyed dancing. And this was an opportunity for them to springboard some of their careers. Some went on to modeling. I have a dancer who's currently a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. So, it was a stepping stone for some dancers.
One topic I want to bring up real quick is my favorite thing that I've ever seen from the Energee dance team is the Seniorgee, I think you called them, right? Where it was like people over like 65 or 55 or something like that, and they would do like these dances to like these hip hop songs, and just hilarious. You have like all these older people out there like doing whips and nays. It was so funny. How did you get that idea, or was that like an idea you got from the community of the dance community, or how did that come about?
I saw a clip from an all-star game where the Miami Heat had a senior dance team. I just saw a quick clip of it, and it just intrigued me. I was really inspired by it, and I thought this would be something great to do. I want to do this. Went to the Bucks. I want to do this. And they said, we think we have a sponsor who would love this. So we met with the sponsor, and it was a hit right from the start. For us, you had to be 60 years old and older, and it was both men and women. And their age was the number on their jersey. And I think it gave the crowd, like you said, Michael, it's a very entertaining group. We would start with something that might be a typical thing that you would see older people do, and then we would break it out into some kind of hip hop routine, and the crowd would go wild. That was my favorite thing on any given night when Seniorgee was there. It was just a blast. And it was so fun to see the dancers on the team and how they blossomed to have this talent and be able to actually perform at their age.
Over your left shoulder, we can see a book that you wrote called Lady of the Court. A lot of the stuff you talked about is in that book. What else is in that book that people can see in there?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's some interesting things in there that are behind the scenes. In fact, the tagline for the book is behind the scenes of NBA entertainment, and some of the not so pretty stuff. I think people are shocked a little bit at how the business of entertainment works in pro sports. I listed in the book all of the rules and regulations just because I thought some people might find that interesting to see what was it that the dancers had to agree to in order to be on the team. Seniorgee was such a big hit. I wrote a lot about Seniorgee. Wrote about some of the mascots too. Some of the mascots were really great to work with, and some weren't so great to work with. So that's all a part of the book.
Very interesting. And then lastly, I just want to ask you about what you're currently doing today and how it's going. You moved to Atlanta and you're involved with Atlanta Theater to Go. So if you want to talk a little bit about that and how that's going.
I am. I'm with Atlanta Theater to Go. I'm the executive director, and it brought me back to my theater background, and I just love that. Part of the reason I'm involved is because of Seniorgee, because what we do is we take theater to seniors, and we take professional actors. Here in Atlanta, we have a plethora of actors, professional actors in film and in theater, so a lot of them are very intrigued by what we're doing. We go to senior centers, 55 and over communities, assisted living places, anywhere that seniors live and gather, we'll go, and we'll put on a professional play for them. We take the sets, we do everything. And there's been a lot of research, both for dance and for theater, on the impact on health for seniors and how good it is for them to be involved with the arts. So I'm really happy to be doing that.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show today. We really appreciate it. And thank you for everything you've done for the Milwaukee Bucks and their entertainment business as well. And we thank you for being on. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys. It was great. Thank you.
Big shout out to Lois Koepke for being our guest on this week's episode. And even a bigger shout out to all of you for watching. We appreciate all of you. We hope you enjoyed episode number 3 with our second guest, Lois. If you did like the video, I encourage you to hit that like button right below and hit the subscribe button as well, as it would help us out a lot. Go look at our last Team Name Tuesdays on oddsportstopics.com. An article will be released tomorrow as well. And make sure to follow us on social medias at Facebook and Twitter at oddsportstopics. And then lastly, on oddsportstopics.com, if you have not subscribed to our blog, make sure to do that so you don't miss one of our articles. Again, thank you all for watching and listening. We really appreciate every single one of you for your support. From Sarandon, PJ, and myself, good night.